In our number 2 story, the possible consequences of Tom Ridge's version of the nexus of politics and terror. If Mr. Ridge is demonized by Bush loyalists for those claims, who better to take counsel from than former White House Press Secretary Scott McClellan? In an email to Politico, quoting McClellan, said, "It is one thing if he is saying he simply felt it was politically motivated. It is quite another if he has specific information showing it was politically motivated. There is no question exploiting the war on terror was viewed by the political strategists as integral to branding the president as a strong and decisive leader who will keep America safe." If Secretary Ridge is making the serious allegation that the terror alert was driven primarily by political concerns late in the campaign, he is going to be expected to back it up with specific information. If he can, it is a serious matter. If he cannot, then I suspect critics will pounce. Let's bring in, as promised, George Washington University law professor, constitutional law expert, Jonathan Turley. John, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
Frame this for us. If political pressure was applied to raise the terror threat level in that instance or any other during the Bush administration, what does that amount to in terms of abuse of power, and is there still any avenue to prosecute it?
Well, it is certainly an abuse of power. It's perhaps the worst form of abuse of power. National security has always been treated as inviolate, something that crossed party lines. Indeed, if you recall, it was a virtual mantra during the Bush administration that any time someone questioned a bill or a position of the government, you would have Bush himself or others saying, "Stop playing politics with national security." And yet we see in books like this allegations that national security was being really manipulated and used as a prop. I mean, people like Ridge, who is obviously a very committed Republican, obviously do not like the fact that bin Laden is being treated like some type of RNC asset, that, you know, when you need him, you sort of take him out of, you know, the backstage and bring him forward to terrify the children. And, you know, it's the problem with this abuse of power is that it doesn't have an easy translation into the law. That is, it's not criminal. These different levels of threat are largely discretionary, if not entirely discretionary, to the president. He can, in fact, and his underlings can, in fact, play around with national security, and it's not a crime. But it most certainly is a betrayal of his oath if these allegations are true. And I think your program raises a very powerful series of events, a pattern where we have had these threats that occurred at very significant moments.
Is it incumbent upon Ridge to try to provide more specific information to this claim, as Mr. McClellan suggests, or is this is an entree to an investigation, or is there any chance of it going from here in any direction officially?
Well, you know, Keith, that's why they don't call these, you know, tell some books. I mean, when you get into an allegation like this, you're in for a penny or a pound, and you need to make good the allegation. It's a very serious allegation, but it's not a new allegation. What Ridge is suggesting here, critics have said for a very long time, that the Bush administration always seemed eager to keep fear alive, that national security had become their only selling point. They had basically lost on all the other political fronts. But what it did then was create this really dangerous situation where danger was a commodity, that it was something that was being used not just politically but in courts to roll back civil liberties, for arrests. It became an entire industry. In fact, I testified to Congress about how we still have this infrastructure from the Bush administration, which is occupied by people who are told and given a huge amount of money to find domestic threats. That's all they do. And there's a tendency when you have that large bureaucracy that's being paid to find domestic threats that they find them because it sort of perpetuates their existence.
There's one other thing in the book here, and we can only go into this in the most brief detail, about Ridge describing when they raised the terror threat level for the financial centers in August 2004, right after the Democratic convention. The White House asked him to add language to the announcement, which lauded Bush's leadership in the war on terror, and he did so. Is there any violation in that, or is that, again, that discretionary stuff you talked about?
Well, unfortunately, it is bad taste, bad policy, but it's not a crime. But it is an abuse of power again. That report is supposed to be a guarantee to the American people that this is the unvarnished, professional, apolitical announcement of the types of risks we are facing. And basically, he's suggesting that the White House treated it like a press release for the president.
Indeed it was. Jonathan Turley of George Washington University. As always, great thanks for the perspective, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Keith.